The Jump. I'm Cassie Hilbert, filling in for Rachel Nichols, here with Ramona, Royce, and Bobby. And we're only 60 days away from the start of the NBA season.
That's not far.
I know, I'm saying. So let's take this opportunity to pick all of the major 2019-2020 regular season awards. And first up, let's discuss the Rookie of the Year. 73% of ESPN's NBA Summer Forecast Experts panel, they picked Zion as the favorite to win Rookie of the Year. Ja Morant came in second, RJ came in third. But here's my question. What's the safer bet for Rookie of the Year, Zion or the field, Momo?
Oh, I'm going to say the field. It's always the field, right? Even if you think somebody's going to win it, it's always the field. I actually would go with Ja because I just think he's going to have a bigger role on that team. I think the Pelicans have gone out of their way not to put too much on Zion, and they have more around him, whereas like Ja is the guy there. He's going to have the ball in his hands all the time.
I mean, I can't wait to see every highlight of his. We missed it in Summer League.
And the other thing is that Zion is going to be battling against our expectations, too.
Yeah.
We're going to be following around. We're going to be watching every highlight dunk. We're going to be wondering if he needs to develop this or do this, or is 16 and 10 really good enough for Zion Williamson? So he's going to battle against that. And like Ramona said, the field is always smarter to go with. And there's some other really good players in this class. So it's not just Zion and a bunch of other guys.
Who's your guy that's sticking out?
I think Ja's a good one for what Ramona said. He's going to have the ball in his hands all the time, and it's going to be his show to run.
I like RJ Barrett.
Ooh.
And I think we forget that we had him as the #1 pick in the draft before the college basketball season started last year, before Zion exploded on the scene. And I still remember, I saw him when he was 16 years old at the City of Palms Classic down in Fort Myers. And he could have played in the NBA then. And I emailed Jonathan Gavoni at the time, like, who is this guy? And it was a 16-year-old RJ Barrett. And I think the situation in New York fits him perfectly.
Yeah, and talk about room to work with, as Ja has with Memphis. I like Rui Hachimura because it's going to be him and Brad Beal next year. And so I think it's, his to kind of make his own there in D.C. All right, let's switch gears to MVP. Yesterday, we discussed Harden's comments about coming in second to Giannis in the MVP race this past season. Ramona, based on all the moves made this offseason, who should be the most valuable player this year? So that's a pause.
I think I am gonna go with LeBron.
You okay?
Okay. Come back.
That hurt you, Momo.
No, I don't know. I mean, I want to say Giannis again because I think he's gonna just get better and better and better. But I'm always a fan of the narrative choice, right?
Okay.
And there is a narrative there with Kawhi. There's something there, obviously, with Steph Curry, but I don't know if Steph's going to really push it and try to get another MVP right there.
They're tired.
Yeah, they need to rest, but I think they're going to win. I just don't know if he's going to push it to score 50 every night.
Could be that motivational factor for LeBron, too, right?
And revenge LeBron scares me. Plus, this is, he was on the outside looking in. He wasn't even in the discussion last year.
I'm sorry, Royce. I'm going to say the player on the best team in the NBA, who's not even listed on that, Nikola Jokic.
Wow.
That's who I'm going to say.
That's why you wanted to get in there.
I did. I didn't want to jump over you.
Chomping at the bit.
But, I look at this Denver team. This Denver team is going to be good. And they've got a favorable schedule in November and December. A lot of home games here. I think they can kind of jump out in front of the race here. Almost similar with Giannis last year in Milwaukee. My concern with Giannis, can he block out the distraction of the Supermax question that is going to hound him all year? Yeah. And if he can maybe kind of nip it right when we get going for media day, maybe I'll put Giannis back in it. But it's going to be, for me right now, it's Jokic.
Yeah, mine's not nearly that hot. I'm just going with Kawhi Leonard. And a lot of the reason that he wasn't in the conversation last year was basically only because he didn't play that much. And the load management kind of held him back. And in order to be valuable, you have to be on the floor. And Kawhi himself, we have to take him at his word. He expects to play more this year. He expects it to be less of an issue. And I expect the Clippers to be the best team in the Western Conference. He's the best player on their team. And when it comes to the next award we're going to talk about, he's going to be a contender for that one as well. So if we value both ends of the floor and everything Kawhi Leonard does, I think he's the favorite.
My pick is same team as LeBron, but the other
way.
And Anthony Davis. I really feel like LeBron's maybe this is not sources are telling me. This is my guess is that LeBron may want Anthony Davis to be an MVP, and I think people forget how dang good Anthony Davis is. The numbers he put up when basically he wasn't playing the fourth quarter because he was being benched. I just think people, are in the what have you done for me lately? And I think he's going to show people that he may still be ahead of the Giannis, other.
That's a good point, though. That LeBron might want him to win it. He wanted to give him his number.
Right.
He couldn't do it this year, so to make up for it, he's going to help him get the MVP.
The giver.
I like that.
He may give him the MVP. Moving on to the Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert has won the award the last 2 seasons. So, Royce, who should be the defensive player?
I think that, I think the Clippers are going to be the best defensive team.
Ooh,
they're going to routinely hold teams in the 80s. And Kawhi Leonard, along with Paul George and along with Patrick Beverley, but Kawhi Leonard's just maybe a notch above those other guys, and he's gonna remind people what a great defender he is.
Bobby?
The new $100 million guy, Draymond Green. I think he is going to play with such an edge. That underdog mentality before Clay gets back. Nobody's predicting this team to do anything this year except getting into the playoffs, and I'm going to stay Draymond right now.
I like that pick, so I'll say something different because I was going to say Draymond as well. I'm going to just toss out Joel Embiid into that conversation. If he's able to stay on the court, if he's able to play and not have any setbacks injury-wise, I think he has something to say, and I think he has regretted not taking that step forward into those awards conversations.
The on-off numbers have always really, really favored him, too.
I was going to say Draymond, too, but, I want to see that because I want to see an even more improved Joel Embiid for sure. Thank you, Ramona. Download the Sterling Affairs now, wherever you get.
Ever bring up Donald Sterling's name, he might as well be Voldemort, right? Like, it's just an era that they've moved on and from, that they don't need reminding of, even though me as the narrative writer, where but listen, this is your journey as a franchise, right? Like, you see how bad it was to how good it was, and this is how they've changed. I don't know. Well, that's something that a writer and a narrative person can say, but when you've lived through that and you've been trying to dig yourself out of the shadow of that and rebrand yourself by doing things completely differently under Steve Ballmer and the new organization that he's built, it's just not a fun time to relive. And I think ultimately, they did make that decision to keep the name. They did make the decision to keep all of the same logos and the same uniforms and all that. And Steve actually did say that at his opening press conference, where he says, I think that this is part of our story. Like, we want the story of the Clippers to be the franchise that comes back from that. So, let's see. He's finally put them in this position to do so.
Well, obviously, we heard in the podcast, talk to players like Ryan Hollins and Matt Barnes and Blake Griffin. But have you had any other players who listen to the podcast and tell you about their their feelings on reliving this situation?
Yeah, I mean, even during this, let's say there's a lot of people you talk to who tell you very juicy stories off the record that they don't necessarily want to tell. That they don't necessarily want told. With their name attached to it. And so that's why I always am very thankful to players like Blake and DeAndre and Darius Miles, Quentin Richardson, Olden Polynice, who has quite a story from the locker room. One of the ones that I didn't use in the podcast, but this kind of drew me into the story as I was just a young beat writer with the Clippers. I was at the LA Daily News. There was a lady from the LA Times. Her name was Lisa Dillman. We used to cover the team together, and that was the Baron Davis year, and the year they were so bad that they ended up with Blake Griffin, right? And one time Donald came into the locker room, and he was really upset because he played Baron Davis a lot of money, and he thought that should, if he was going to spend money, they should win. He thought that's how that worked. I never spend money, so then when I do, it better work. And he was really angry at Barron, and Mark Spears has written that story about how he used to heckle Barron, and Barron's talked about how disturbing that was for him. So he comes in the locker room one day and just is yelling and screaming at everyone in there, and specifically targeting Barron and saying how disappointing this was, except it wasn't Barron that he was yelling at. It was Al Thornton, who just happened to be standing in front of him, and Barron's locker was behind him, and and the players were just like,
right.
What?
If nothing else,
perpetual cringe. That's all it was, just cringe after cringe.
Right, and he had a disjointed view of reality. If you don't take anything else from this podcast, that's to say the least about Donald Sterling. And as you mentioned, a big part of moving on from the Sterling era was selling the team to Steve Ballmer, and Ballmer wants a new arena in the nearby Inglewood, California. He's also entertained the idea of changing the name of the team. Ramona, how seriously are they considering a full rebrand?
So I think the stadium is Steve Ballmer's rebrand. Like this is, and this is what I think is like just this fascinating parallel between Donald Sterling and Jerry Buss, who the late owner of the Lakers, where when Jerry Buss bought the Lakers, he sold all of his real estate assets, and he became an owner where the Lakers